Today's video, we are looking at this stable door for a friend of mine, and she's asked me to come and take a look at it as to whether we should repair or replace this door. And I'm going to take you through that process today as to what we choose to do. We all come across these projects where it's not quite worth spending a huge amount of money on the perfect door and a brand new Acquire everything. We're just going to sort of spend enough money on this to kick it down the road, kick the can on it, get it down the road and last another 10 years maybe. Try and make some improvements to how it operates and uses, how it looks, and also a little bit more thermally efficient. Not in too bad of a condition despite what it looks like. Actually the timbers aren't rotten too badly at all. The only bits which are rotten are the weather bars on the door, which are completely removable anyway. Frame's in good nick. We can sort of restore that and get all that back to its original or as good as possible condition. The boarding at the bottom here is a little bit ropey, but I've got a plan for dealing with that whilst saving it at the same time. On the inside, everything's pretty much going to stay as it is. We're going to keep the boarding that makes up the outside of the door. I'm going to thermally insulate this boarding because it's only a very thin piece of wood, and create a new sort of inner face that's thermally insulated. And it hangs pretty nice. It's a nice door. There's a little bit of a draft seal issue at the top here we can address when we come to fit in it. But yeah, it should be a nice little project. It shouldn't take too long, and hopefully a massive improvement for the customer. Always take the door off, leaving the hinges on the door. If you start taking it off, leaving the hinges on, it's really difficult to get the screwdriver in because of the rebate on the frame, and then the door moves away from the hinges. You wouldn't do them. You set that door like I've done there, so the hinge is obviously one side of the door, but if you just open the door enough with a slight angle, about 85 degrees, the weight of the door will actually keep that hinge in the pocket without any screws in place. So that I'll take all the screws out there. There's no movement on that door. Take all but one out the top. That's a good tip for a really expensive door, is to just check your screw that you're removing is good, put it back in, then undo all the others. So I've fallen short before where you take 3 of the screws out and the door falls off the hinges because the 4th screw's been snapped and just the head glued back in. Top tip already, tip number 1 in this video. So we can support the door. With this last one you can actually do it without a prop, just sort of manually. Take that screw out, get rid of your screwdriver, take the belt clips off, and then if it's not been glued in or it's too tight, it's very tight in that hinge housing, we can try and get that out. They've been housed in a little bit tight. You see, like they've almost hammered that hinge, or the wood has swelled around the hinge. So getting that out without damaging it is going to have to go that way, really. Quite tricky. You don't want to risk holding it, or you want a bit more tape-like control. You can use a little airbag like I've got here, or some wedges under that side of the door. Just take the weight of it, and that'll both hold it from moving around and support the weight of the door as you take it off. So the sill here, it's not the best sill in the world, but because it's got a flap before the bevel, but I guess the water bar on the door will get the rain past the majority of that flap. But there's no seal on that, so we've got to incorporate one on the underside of the door that will seal onto this water bar here. Before we get cracking on that, I've got a shout out to Ansell, providing me with the gloves and sponsoring this video. I've had these a couple of weeks now and getting on really, really well with them. You can tell there's paint and all sorts on here, but they are holding up absolutely incredibly. And I'm really enjoying that they've almost like thermally moulded to my hand. If I take my hand out of that glove, it stays in the same shape as my hand, and it really feels like you're wearing an extra layer of skin over your hand. And because multiple times I've got home and gone in the door at night and I'm still wearing my gloves, so that's a testament to how comfy they are, and they're working out to be really durable. But running a promotion on Amazon at the minute, so I'll leave the details of that down below with a link to get to it. You can get 20% off your first pair of gloves. Right, let's strip these bits back and see what we're working with. So, I tend to use a couple of metal shims whenever I'm leaving anything on. If something I want to keep, it tends to protect the components either side from any damage from the levering. Beautiful. I think that's in need of repair. Come out. That was pretty well stuck on there, but very little damage to that edge by just sliding them two very thin shims in and then working a gap in between them, and the metal sort of tries to protect the edge. Obviously the bigger gap, the thicker of these you can use, the more protection you get. Top tip number 2, isn't it that? See how many we can get out of this video. It's got to be worth 2 likes, isn't it? That's stuck really well and not let any water through it, so fair play. I wouldn't use silicone. So we go, the top one is in beautiful nick. That's there's no signs of any rot at all. There's a little bit in the bottom of that door. I think we might just wholesale replace the face of that bottom rail. Tiny little repair on that, but the inside of that is pretty strong, so should be good to go on that one. Hoping these are solid brass hinges and we can clean them up. Screws are not a bit dodgy. A bit of luck that came out. A little look on the back, look at that, beautiful solid brass. Nice little job for Ali that, to clean them up. We have got a cap flap to put back on here. I'm hoping I can take all these boards out and move it across to the middle. Because we're not having a brace necessarily on the back of the door, we can just have a panelled door, because it's going to be one piece of board to hold the squareness of the door. We can put the cap flap in the middle. I think it'll look a little bit better than it does at the minute. Separate that one from each board. Breaking it. Middle out. I'm too worried about that bit of board. I just want to save the door from getting damaged. $5mm of nail holding that in. Amazing. There we go. It's a lot easier to work on and it's reduced down to its component parts. I'm considering just swapping that bottom rail completely. had all three different types, well, maybe more screws. We had 3 size flatheads, Possum and a Phillips so far. The difficulty I've got now is getting this brace out without dislodging all the boarding. I want to keep this door as a winner. I wanted the boards out the other one, but I fear that if I lever off of them, I'm going to pop the boards off and not the brace. I'm going to try screw it in there, see if I can pull it straight off. Persuade each board individually. Beautiful. Door's got all these nails through from the face into the braces, which is a bit of a feature of the door. So instead of bashing them through or pulling them and breaking all this wood away, I'm just going to try and cut them off and have insulation on that anyway. So got a pair of flush cutting pliers, so the cutting edges like on the face of the plier, and just trim them. So that one is pretty straightforward. Then you can just wire brush and sand and clean this face up pretty quickly. Cut insulation and a little bit of a tricoya board for the back, and then we can paint all that and get a nice finish on there. So put that one to one side for now, and then we'll bring the bottom half, the door, up to that same position and do them both together. So I'm just going to router out the face of this bottom rail, make it taller so that we can cut the boarding off to a new height, get rid of this rot at the same time. So I'm going to cut them boards off. Get that slot in there. So they're at that 58. So I'll cut all that dirty bottom bit off. Make a new face for this bit of the door that will come down. We'll have a new weather bar on the face there that will almost cover all that up. So we'll have a decent looking door, and then on the inside we'll have to build the inside up as well, so that boarding's got something for it to sort of sit back onto. So I've decided to splice these corners in where there's a bit of rot in the door. I was going to splice it this way, but decided to do it properly and have the splice going into the piece of wood. The idea is that water running down here doesn't go into the joint as you cut it below it, it runs out of it. And it's also held by the timber here that's good as you put your new smaller piece of wood in. I'm just going to use my knife to create a perimeter, router that out, and put a piece in there. Little tip when you're starting a multi-tool, like if I want to go back into that groove accurately and then continue that cut, I'll just turn it off and get it in the groove, like hovering just in it. Then start it up, whereas if it's running, the blade tends to vary front to back as well as side to side. You'll find it'll like wobble its way into the groove and open that cut line up. asked a million times on any repair videos what glue it is, so I will link the glue in the description down below that I'm using here. All these bits of repair timber are Accoya, so I'm going to have to try and age them down. It's not the same timber as this, but it is a timber that is basically rot resistant. Right, so the inside of this door is going to cut in a complete piece of MDF, like a tricoya board, and then groove it to look like boarding in the door and paint this space. I think we can try and keep the natural pine colour. I've got some old floorboards I've just cut down to size. And I think that's just about character enough that they can be cut in there and finished in the same as the door, and we'll just put them up to each other like interior sort of finish panels and make the inside of the door look like that out of pine. Then we can stain it all in one colour, and then we'll use this sort of tiling board as the insulation between the two. So glued a piece of timber on there, and these battens will go behind the boarding around the door that sort of sit around that, so these boards can pin onto that like so to hold them in place. And then we've got a full insulation board sealing the entire back of the boarding, so none of the air will get through the gaps in these boards. So I'm going to go with that. I'm not overly sure about these being reclaimed floorboards, that they've got screw holes and stuff in them, but being just a pinned on board on the inside face of the door, they really don't like this interior finish. We can always swap it later on for some nicer boarding or something. It's not a big job just to pop them back off and redo. Put a little bead groove on there that matches the boarding on the outside. And it's just brought them boards looking more like they belong in a door than on a pallet. So I'm just messing about with this bit of Accoya and put a dark stain on it, and then wire brush it back and then go over with the same stain we're going to use on the rest of it. See if we can get it to just blend in a tiny bit so it looks a bit more aged than stand out like a sore thumb as it is. I'm just going to put that scraper on there. It doesn't scrape the grain of the next piece. See if they all go back in. One, two. Hey, that matches in alright actually for a dodgy bit of Accoya. So they look like together. I think it looks quite cool. It's worth saving, wasn't it? Righty, we're back to fit a door. Look at that. It's better than buying a new one, isn't it? Look at these screws. Ali, look at this polishing work on them screws. Tell you what, mate. Making me nervous about scratching them now. That's the reason why I own 5 of these drills. Just the control from it is unbelievable. You can do flathead bitlock and just torque that round to anything you want. Unbelievable little drills now. Nice. So I'm hanging a door like this on my own without sort of props. Just want to hang the door quickly. Always get your screws ready. So I've got my drill with a screw in the driver bit ready to go. And I'll either like clamp that or have it on my belt clip or nearby if I can on a shelf. And then second screw ready to hand. Not advisable in your mouth, but got to use what you're given. And then it won't line up with the bottom hinge. It'll always be a little bit low, especially if you're hanging it off the floor like a normal door. Put your first screw there in the drill. Just get that in one of the screw holes. So you can lift that door up or do whatever you need to do to align it. And just screw that in until the hinge is nearly flush with the frame so it can free move around. That gives you like a third hand where it's holding the door for you in a set position. And then put your next screw on your drill ready to go. And you can then position your top hinge with your other hands to get that in the socket. So once that top hinge is in that top socket, you can put that second screw in. I don't go fully tight, I go enough in with the screw so that it holds it in the housing, but it can still move around. And that allows you to wiggle the door up and down, left and right, to get the bottom hinge in the housing. Once they're both in and seated nicely, and not damage the housing, and just nip them both up. It's a good way of hanging a door without needing sort of the perfect prop under the far end of the door. Stable doors are renowned for being really tricky to get everything to flow perfectly. As you open that door, you want the gap between the door to remain absolutely perfect all the way around so that they can be detached and whatever, either in the open position or the shut position. So for that to happen, everything through the knuckles of them hinges has got to be in perfect alignment. Every hinge plumb both this way and from this direction, and then all the door gaps and everything to be absolutely spot on. So we've got a bit of an issue. I think this frame's in slightly wonky, so I've got to try and cut this in just straight through the hinges, not rely on a plumb line. And then I'm not going to fully get all of that out the top there. There's a big tapering gap, but I'm going to put that down for a bit of character. But try and get this top door to tweak up about 3mm on this edge. And the same with that bottom door. Get both of them to come back up and a little bit more into square, and get it working a little bit better than it is. So you can see as this one opens, the gap is between the doors. It's tightening as it comes round to the open position, and then they get tight when they're almost at 90 degrees. So that means that in this plane here, the hinges are set correctly in terms of that gap on the door, but as they open up, these knuckles are obviously creating a V shape between each other. So either the top hinge here or the bottom hinge here need to go back to bring them into an alignment, so that as it's open in this position here, they're straight up that back edge of the door, not causing a twist. It's actually good practice to get them all in alignment on a bigger door as well, because that's what causes a lot of squeaking on doors, is that middle hinge is obviously on a solid door style, and trying to force the door and bend it as it turns around that 90 degrees. So if you've got a really squeaky door hinge at home and there's 3 hinges on it, that's probably why it's squeaking. Just ripped a little 1mm packer out of timber. Super glue them in there with some activator so it goes off straight away. It's actually been really nice to me, that bit of grain. Okay, so that's evened up the gaps around the door, so as best I can, short of moving all the hinge housings up to eliminate this gap up here. We've got quite an even gap down this side of the door. Tapers off a bit at the bottom, but I can't really pack the bottom of the door out anymore to counteract that, because I'd have to pack it on the door side, and that would make the pinching in the middle here worse as the door opens. So that's as good as I can do, short of an awful lot of work fillering every hinge housing there and redoing every single one. So I'm pretty happy with that. I think that'll be fine. It pinches by 1mm or 1.5mm as it gets to 90 degrees. So I'm just going to open that middle gap up a little bit more so it isn't pinching at all. So it just gives it a little bit more clearance. And we've just got some draft strip seals to put in. So on this rebate here in the door, got a compression draft seal here. It's a Deventer seal, and that's going to go and be machined in the top door leaf where you don't see it, vertically like that. And that's going to compress onto the other door. So we've got to cut a groove for that fin, and then cut the rebate back by a few mil, and cut the bottom off that door by a couple of mil to give us that clearance and get that machined in there. I'm doing exactly the same thing on the bottom. So where that door is rebated over this weather bar, seal's going to go in the door and compress on it like so, and that'll provide a draft seal at the bottom of the door like that. These are great because they're like really light to seal on. There's no pressure on the door, so for an old door like this, it's a bit wobbly. It doesn't take loads of sort of force from the door to press the seals in. They're just dead gentle. And then the seals around the side of the frame, lucky we've got this groove in here, so I'm just going to use an Aquamax seal on that one. I've not got a Deventer version of that, but this is what I'd normally use on a retrofit, a little Aquamax 21. And there is a little bit of a twist in the door. We can just use a rebate plane to scrape this back to almost fit the shape of the door as it closes, and then just deepen the groove by scraping out with either a multi-tool or a chisel, and just keep pushing that draft strip back until the door meets it perfectly all the way down this edge. Left me route a bit at home that does that cut, but luckily the table saw very dodgily is the right kerf diameter for it, kerf width, so we run it over the top of the saw with a bit of assistance from Ali. Beautiful. If you can't see it, I'll just take my word for it that is absolutely perfect. There we go, that's what we wanted in between the two doors. They just touch when they're sort of 2mm apart, and you get a tiny bit of compression. You don't want loads of pressure on them seals, you want them to touch. That's perfect. I just screwed the lock back in and put a draft seal down that side of the frame like it's going to be, just to see how the door closes now. And it's nearly there. It's got most of it. There's just that twist in this top door, and it's dead easy to push that out enough for the draft seal to work. I'm just going to put a little bit more pressure on that latch. I'm going to go back about 1.5 mil on this face plate. So I'll show you what I do with that. Got to take this one out and move it back and fill down these front edges so it looks finished. There we go. I always carry a little gauge in my bag that's been cut off right next to the pin for just this purpose. Give us a guideline for our chisel to fall into. Glue it in a little bit bigger than you need, and then trim it down afterwards. I don't know why they've chopped it in a bit wonky, but my chopping in is wonky. I think I'm alright. So I always fit a door with the posi screws, but it's because they're dead easy to get in, and then you can just pay attention when you put in the brass slot screws in, so that you don't slip the screw heads, because they're not magnetic, so they don't stick to the drill, and a little bit trickier to get them seated nicely. It dries clear, this sealant, completely clear. It's water based, so it's really good for painting over. There we go, my work here is done. I'm going to leave this door in the capable hands of the homeowner Libby, who's doing a bit of a restoration of this little cottage. So hopefully we'll check back in another time on the channel to see how she's getting on with that. If you haven't done so already, have a look at the gloves on the link down below in the description. I'd really appreciate it if you followed the link to find them, because it associates my channel and me with Ansell themselves and gives that linking performance from my videos, and ultimately might help me with a future sponsorship on them. And the best way to promote this channel is to now go and watch some of my other videos, so I'll leave a link to something you might find interesting at the end of this video. Thank you for watching.